It happened so fast, a single careless click that spiraled into chaos. One moment, I was multitasking like any other day. The next, I realized I'd made a catastrophic mistake. An email containing sensitive information had been sent to the wrong recipient. At first, denial kicked in. I convinced myself it wasn't a big deal, that nothing would come of it. But as hours passed, reality set in. Lives could be affected, careers jeopardized, trust shattered. Tonight, I want to confess what happened, the accident, the aftermath, and the weight of responsibility I've carried ever since. Because silence hasn't healed me, it's only deepened the guilt. Looking back now, I see how easily mistakes can happen when you're stretched too thin. That day started like any other. I was drowning in deadlines, trying to keep up with endless emails, meetings, and reports. My mind was scattered, jumping from one task to another without pause. When the confidential document landed in my inbox, I didn't think twice about opening it. It was routine, part of my job. But then came the email draft. Half written, half edited, and before I knew it, I hit send instead of saving it for review. In that split second, everything changed. What seemed like a harmless oversight became a breach I couldn't undo. The immediate aftermath was suffocating. As soon as I realized what I'd done, my heart sank. I tried calling the recipient immediately, hoping they hadn't seen the email yet. Each ring felt like an eternity, dread pooling in my stomach. When they finally picked up, their tone was calm but firm. They assured me they wouldn't share the contents, but the damage was already done. They were professional, understanding even, but I couldn't shake the feeling of failure. Sitting there in that quiet corner of the office, surrounded by the hum of printers and distant chatter, I felt utterly alone. How could I have let this happen? How could I fix something so irreversible? Denial became my shield almost instantly. It's not that bad, I told myself. They promised not to share it. It'll blow over. I spent hours crafting mental justifications, convincing myself that no real harm had been done. Maybe the recipient truly wouldn't act on the information. Maybe nobody would find out. But deep down, I knew better. Every time I replayed the incident in my head, shame washed over me. I wanted to believe it was a minor slip-up, but the truth gnawed at me relentlessly. Fear of consequences kept me silent, even though I knew I should report the breach. Admitting the mistake to my boss was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Walking into that meeting room, I felt like a child caught red-handed. Their initial reaction wasn't anger, it was disappointment, which somehow cut deeper than rage ever could. They asked questions calmly, seeking clarification about what had happened and why. Each word I spoke felt heavy, loaded with guilt and regret. By the end of the conversation, I was crying openly, apologizing profusely for the breach. To their credit, they handled the situation professionally, assuring me we'd mitigate the damage. But their final words stuck with me. Trust is fragile. Once broken, it takes immense effort to rebuild. Rebuilding trust required humility. Humility I hadn't been willing to show until it was forced upon me. When news of the breach spread, as it inevitably does, I braced myself for judgment or ridicule. Instead, I chose transparency. I gathered my closest colleagues in the break room and confessed everything. The error, the panic, the steps taken to address it. Some listened patiently, expressing disappointment, but ultimately forgiving me. Others remained skeptical, questioning whether I'd learned my lesson. It wasn't easy. Trust takes time to rebuild, but over weeks and months, small gestures of accountability helped mend fractured relationships. Healing isn't linear, but it's worth the effort. Through this experience, I've learned that accountability isn't weakness, it's strength. Admitting you've made a mistake, that you let carelessness override diligence, that takes courage. Writing in my journal has helped me process years of suppressed emotions, confronting patterns of avoidance and self-deception. Each page brought clarity, each sentence a step closer to healing. For the first time, I understood that growth comes from grace, not perfection. And though the road ahead won't always be easy, I'm ready to face it as my true self. Making amends meant taking action, not just apologizing, but ensuring something like this never happens again. I worked closely with IT and management to develop stricter security measures, including double-check systems and mandatory training sessions for all employees. Presenting these changes to my team felt like a turning point, a chance to prove that I'd learned from my mistake. Though some colleagues still eyed me warily, others offered support, acknowledging the effort I'd put into preventing future breaches. These moments reminded me that redemption isn't given, it's earned through consistent effort and genuine change. This experience has fundamentally changed me. It taught me that trust is sacred, that shortcuts lead to disaster, and that accountability begins within. Writing in my journal has become a form of therapy, allowing me to unpack layers of guilt and shame. Each entry reminds me of the importance of mindfulness, focus, and integrity. I used to pride myself on being efficient, on juggling multiple tasks at once. Now, I prioritize quality over speed, knowing that rushing leads to mistakes. For the first time in years, I feel grounded, not because I've erased the past, but because I've grown from it. Tonight feels different, not because everything has changed, but because I've started seeing things differently. That single mistake taught me more than just caution. It showed me how fragile trust can be. For so long, I feared facing the consequences of my actions. But now, standing here on this rooftop, watching the city come alive, I realize that accountability isn't about erasing the past. It's about learning from it. Life is unpredictable, messy, and often painful, but it's also beautiful when lived with intention. Thank you for listening to my story.